Hello everyone. So we will continue reading chapter 2. So Tolle makes a clear, critical distinction that most of us have never been shown. The difference between healthy, practical intelligence and the psychological fear that dominates our inner life. Most of the fear we carry has nothing to do with what is actually happening right now. It is entirely about what the mind imagines might happen. We are treating an imagined future as though it were a present emergency. On one side, practical intelligence, when we keep our hands away from flame, that is not fear, it is simple knowledge. The mind applying past learning to protect the body. This is useful, this is healthy. On the other hand, psychological fear, the unease, the worry, the anxiety, the nervousness, dread, all forms of fear about something that might happen, not something that is actually happening. We are here in the present. The fear is about a projected future, and we cannot cope with a mind projection because it is not real. In practice, we lie awake at 3 a.m. gripped by anxiety about a meeting that has not yet happened. We feel dread about a conversation we may or may not need to have. We rehearse disasters that will probably never occur. And all the while, right now, in this exact moment, we are actually fine. Nothing is wrong. All is well. But the mind has created an emergency in the future, and our body is responding to it as though it were real. Think of a film projection. The movie is not real, but if the cinema is dark enough and the screen large enough and we are absorbed enough, our body responds as though it is. Heart racing, palms sweating. Psychological fear works the same way. The mind's projections are vivid enough that the body treats them as reality. Right now, in this actual moment, is anything genuinely threatening happening? And how much of our tension is actually about a projected future that does not yet exist? We can always cope with the present moment. We cannot cope with a mind projection. The practice is learning to tell the difference and returning our attention to what is actually here. The next slide makes the mechanism of anxiety very clear and shows exactly where it lives and why it persists. On the left, the present moment, solid, real, here. On the right, the future, as imagined by the mind. A projection, not yet real. In between, and in between is the anxiety gap. Tolle explains, as long as we are identified with the mind, this gap is our constant companion. The mind perpetually lives slightly ahead of us, projecting scenarios, building concerns, rehearsing responses to things that have not happened. And wherever the mind goes, our emotional body follows. That is anxiety. And here's the liberating part. We can always cope with the left side, the present moment, even when it's difficult. It is finite, it's concrete, it's workable. We can meet it. What we cannot cope with is the right side, because it's not real. We cannot solve a problem that does not even exist yet. We cannot manage a future our mind has made up at 3 a.m. And yet, this is precisely where most of our attention is living. Think of driving while staring at a map of a road 50 miles away. Not the road we are actually on. Absorbed in navigating the future at the cost of missing what is right in front of us. That is the anxiety gap in daily life. So in the last week, how many of our most anxious moments were actually about the present moment? And how many were about the projected future the mind was managing? Tolle reveals why arguments feel so charged, why we defend our opinions so furiously, and why being proven wrong can feel like a survival emergency. We have all been in an argument where we knew somewhere deep down that we were probably wrong, but we kept going, kept defending, because something in us could not afford to lose. Today we find out what that something is. The ego is, as Tolle says, a fictitious entity. It has no real foundation. It is constructed entirely from thought, from the identifications we saw on previous slides. And because it is fictional, it is inherently fragile. It feels constantly under threat. When we disidentify with a mental position, an opinion, a belief, a point of view, that position becomes part of us. It becomes ego. And when someone challenges it, the ego does not register a difference of opinion. It registers a threat to its existence. To be wrong to the ego is the same as to die. And this is why the argument escalates, not because the subject matter is so important, but because the ego cannot afford to lose. This is why people stay in clearly failing positions rather than backing down. Wars have been fought over this exact mechanism. Nations going to war not over resources, but over the unbearable ego feeling of being wrong. And in our daily life, how many relationships have been damaged? Not because of what was being discussed, but because of the ego's terror of total defeat. Tolle says, when we disidentify from the mind, when our sense of self is no longer derived from our possessions, being wrong becomes completely harmless. We can state our view clearly and firmly, and if it turns out we were mistaken, we can simply say so. Because our identity is not on the line. It never was. So when we notice defensiveness rising in us, is there a way to catch it before it takes over us? To see the ego's fear underneath the argument and choose not to follow it? Defensiveness is always the ego protecting something that does not actually need protecting. The moment we see this, the charge dissolves. We can still have views, we just no longer have to die for them. We meet one of Tolle's most important practical concepts, again, the pain body. Accumulated emotional residue from our past that lives inside us and actively seeks to feed and perpetuate itself. Most of us have had the experience of reacting far more strongly than a situation seemed to want. Something small happens and a wave of emotion arrives that feels ancient. That is not a coincidence, that is a pain body. Tolle says the pain body as accumulated past pain, all the emotional suffering we have experienced and not fully processed. Rather than dissolving naturally, it collects. It forms what he calls a semi-autonomous energy entity that lives inside us, distinct from our thoughts, but deeply connected to them. It is made of emotion, old grief, old anger, old shame, old fear. And it is not passive, it needs to feed. And what it feeds on is more negative emotion, which means it is invested in keeping us suffering. The pain body lies dormant. It sleeps, sometimes for weeks, for months, and then something triggers it. A tone of voice that echoes old criticism, a situation that mirrors an old wound, and it wakes. In that moment, it takes over our thinking, pulling us towards grievance, sadness, towards drama, towards the negative. And because it is now running our thinking, we genuinely believe we are just having thoughts. We do not realize the pain body has hijacked the process. This is why the same argument keeps reoccurring in the same relationships, not because the subject matters so much, but because each person's pain body is triggering and feeding the others. So the first step is always recognition, simply knowing this thing exists. Because the moment we can say without judgment, the pain body is active right now, we have already begun to step out of it. We have become the watcher of it, rather than the victim of it. The pain body is not who we are, it's accumulated old pain seeking to survive by generating more pain. The moment we see it clearly, the power over us begins to dissolve. So Tolle raises something most people have never consciously acknowledged. The possibility that we are, at some level, attached to our suffering. So we will continue reading this slide in our next video. So we'll end this video here. So next video will still be chapter 2, continuation. So in the comments below, please share your experience with this session. Which idea landed more strongly today, and were you able to see the pain body in your day-to-day triggers, which often happens? And did we tried watching the thinker even for 30 seconds today? Please share what happened. And if you like this video, please share it with someone ready for this kind of inquiry. And please subscribe so you stay connected with us in the next sessions. Thank you for listening.